Hey there, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today for our UCAN talk show. I'm Varun Sriram with Generation UCAN, and I am joined by board-certified sports dietitian, our VP of Nutrition, Karen Hosenfeld. Hey, Karen, how are you doing today?
Hey, how's it going, Varn? I am so excited about this particular webinar and talk show because of the massive amounts of email that I've been receiving from you all out there with your questions. Obviously, we'd have to talk for probably 5 or 6 hours to get to all of them, but I think we can lump them into some general categories and really help some people tonight. So I'm super excited.
Awesome. And yeah, to piggyback off what Karen's saying, with this talk show format, you guys may have heard our different webinars and online shows in the past, but today we're really hoping to both answer your questions and hear from you, the UCAN community. So if you guys want to come on live with us, we would absolutely love to bring you on with Karen and myself. Just send us a message in the chat. You got a question, you simply just want to share your experience and your feedback. We'd love to bring as many folks on live as we can here in the next 40 or 45 minutes. That being said, if folks in the audience are shy, Karen and I have plenty of questions that we will tackle that a lot of you guys have sent in. So hopefully we can do a great job answering all of your UCAN related questions today. So as we get started with our discussion, I just wanted to put a poll up on the screen to get an idea of who we have here in the audience in terms of what you guys are most interested in using UCAN for. Karen, before we dive into that, you with your background as a dietitian prior to having worked for UCAN, what element of UCAN initially intrigued you when you first heard about the product or were inquiring about the product? What was it about UCAN that made you feel like, hey, this is something that I feel like I can use, I can implement?
Well, this poll is great, and I can't wait to hear what everybody's saying, what their selections are. The first time that I heard about UCAN, it was for endurance training, and I know a lot of people out there probably have as well. And when I was counseling people, I always thought when someone walked in my door in private practice, hey, if they're an endurance athlete, I sure as heck am going to recommend UCAN. But then what happened was it was giving people such great energy that I started to see it's not just for endurance, it's for fitness, it's for general everyday workouts, it's for weightlifting, it's for group fitness classes, it's for all kinds of activities. And then I also had a subset of people that were coming to me, clients that were coming, that were, maybe they were middle-aged, and it's the guy with the beer gut or the woman who hits menopause or premenopause, and they're really fighting that body fat percentage, and they're not trying to, do any kind of competitions. They're just trying to manage every day and lose about 15, 20 pounds. And so I started to use it with them as well. And what I found was there's very few people out there that can't benefit from steady energy and from the benefits and there's vast amount of benefits that come from Generation UCAN. So it's actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was how people were asking me about these other applications of UCAN, not just taking it 30 minutes before a run, but all the other ways that they could use it as well.
Well, awesome, Karen. Great perspective, and we'll certainly get into all of that. So as we look at the results of our poll, and like you mentioned, Karen, hearing about UCAN from the endurance world, 72% of the folks that we have in the audience today are interested in that application of UCAN, which we certainly understand, and we're absolutely going to touch on that for sure. And for you folks that want to use UCAN for daily workouts, as a meal replacement for everyday energy, don't you worry, because that perhaps is one of the most powerful instances to use UCAN, like Karen talked about, both to have better energy day to day and to help transform your body. So let's just, in starting, spend just a couple minutes on talking about what makes UCAN unique and how you should really think about the product. So what Karen mentioned from an energy standpoint, that's really fundamentally what UCAN is for. So UCAN is an energy source, and it's giving you, whether it's our powders or bars, that steady and even blood sugar level, which impacts your energy. And if we really look at, especially in the endurance world, as we're talking about endurance athletes, so many of what endurance athletes are used to consuming before exercise, during exercise, they're really these fast-acting sugars or carbohydrate sources that are giving you that quick surge of energy followed by that big decline. So that up and down level in your blood sugar. Karen, from your vantage point, what's the problem when people from an exercise standpoint are fueling in this manner, which causes these blood sugar imbalances?
Well, definitely what happens is when you hit that wall, that ubiquitous wall that we know about, if you've worked out, either fasted or had something that's sugary, that you were told, hey, have something that'll give you fast energy before a workout, then all of a sudden you're crashing. That's the middle of your workout. If nothing else, even that progression, you see on the screen the sugar spike, and you see that your energy levels are going down, down, down. Just that progression of starting to drop, you're starting to feel that. And what happens is, if nothing else besides that lack of energy, you're also losing that mental edge. And now you're starting to feel it, and you're starting to feel that, oh gosh, how much longer do I have left of this battery pack that I have inside of me, basically? How much longer do I have left that this is going to keep working, that, half a bagel or whatever or a banana or something that I ate before my workout. So it's really not a great place to be. And then you have that sugar crash where you're dipping below what your normal blood sugar should be. And, it's happening just as the nature of having that sugar on board. Then your insulin kicks in, and sometimes it's more than what your body can handle, and then you're starting to feel pretty bad. And by the way, you've still got 5 miles left to run, or whatever the case may be. So this is a real problem for a lot of people that are traditionally loading, with regular, traditional kind of either sports supplements or struggle food, and trying to figure out, how am I going to fuel for this activity? And I'm getting a lot of questions lately about very long activities as well. I want to go 3 or 4 hours. How do I do that? So we can talk about that a little bit later on as well.
And, we talked about it in the athletic and exercise context. How about just, how does these blood sugar imbalances, just from a day-to-day standpoint, from a daily energy standpoint, how does this manifest itself, in terms of the ill effects of having blood sugar fluctuations just throughout your day?
Well, it's really difficult. First of all, a lot of us, we might consider ourselves, some of us, I would hope, if you're working out regularly, we consider ourselves athletes in a way. However, unless you're a very high-level, fine-tuned athlete or been doing your sport, maybe it's running, just because I know that a lot of people said that they think of UCAN for endurance training, and that's what they're trying to accomplish. A lot of times people that are at that high level, and you're in that competition mode or in that training mode, you understand your blood sugar, how it responds a little bit better. But even then, we get outside of training mode or working out mode, and you don't realize that your body is still going through those ups and downs all day long. So, and it's crazy to me, because people will go very long periods of time either without eating or without fueling the way that they should before they go on through those long periods without eating, and they're having this exact same sugar spike and sugar crash, that they're not even kind of realizing that their body's going through this roller coaster multiple times per day. It makes it more difficult to have restful sleep at night. It's more difficult to do your job, no matter what that is. So again, it's not just when you're running or doing workouts, it's just all the rest of the daytime. When you have low energy or these fluctuations, it's hard for the synapses in your brain to be making these connections, and harder for you to be thinking and on your feet and being able to perform well, whether you're at work or taking care of the kids or whatever the case may be. And a lot of times people aren't even aware that it's happening. If you happen to have something like diabetes where you're checking your blood sugar, you'd absolutely know and start to get in tune with how your body feels. But most of us don't go through the day like that. So this conversation is really important to have if you're not familiar with how your blood sugar is reacting throughout the day.
And the reason we talk about blood sugar, as we move on to talking about UCAN a little bit more, is because it's really the fundamental idea behind what UCAN does. So what's unique in UCAN is the SUPERSTARCH. That's the energy source, the carbohydrate that you find in both our powders and bars. And this is a very slow releasing, long lasting energy source. So instead of your traditional carbohydrate sources that you find, your sugars in sports nutrition products, or your maltodextrin, which you find in a lot of popular sports nutrition products, or even, these typical energy foods that we consume, whether it's a banana, a piece of toast, an energy bar, a bowl of cereal. These are all not designed to maintain our blood sugar. So to maintain your energy, it really, whether you're talking about just energy through the day or energy for your workout, you really have to keep redosing with these either foods or sports nutrition products at fairly frequent intervals. Now, if you had a carbohydrate source that could manage your blood sugar and just trickle in very slowly, keep you steady like the SUPERSTARCH does, you have better energy for your workouts. You also have better energy for your day, and that can lead to a whole host of other positive implications. So that's at a fundamental level what's so unique about UCAN. It's not only is it giving you energy, but it's giving you prolonged energy where you don't have to dose repeatedly over and over and over again. And it comes back to the SUPERSTARCH. So just spend just a minute or so. The SUPERSTARCH, which is the key ingredient in UCAN, it's completely unique to the UCAN products, and it was originally developed as a life-saving energy source for our founder's son, Jonah, who suffers from a very rare metabolic disorder. So Jonah had to be fed previously every 2 hours. He was suffering from severe low blood sugar, and this SUPERSTARCH was developed to help maintain that steady energy level for several hours for kids like Jonah who have this rare condition. So the starting ingredient we use is a non-GMO cornstarch. It's a very complex carbohydrate, and then we cook it additionally for an extended period of time. And the way the starch is cooked causes it to break down much slower. So the reason you're seeing that red line from the SUPERSTARCH in the graph is because of the cooking process we apply to this non-GMO cornstarch, which ultimately allows it to have the properties of the SUPERSTARCH. So at that level, just what makes UCAN so unique is, from an energy standpoint, like you were talking about, Karen, this is something before a workout, first thing in the day you take, and you're not going to feel those ups and downs in your blood sugar. It's that real steady and stable feeling of energy, and it's interesting societally. I feel like we so many times we think about energy products, right? And we're conditioned to thinking, a hit of sugar, a hit of caffeine. It's something that we take in and we feel right away. With UCAN, the energy feeling is a little different. It's simply that calm and even energy where you don't feel these fluctuations. So with that, we've kind of described
Varn, and it's kind of funny that you. Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear you speaking. It's kind of funny because when I first heard of UCAN and I heard of the story of Jonah and his piece that he has and he had to be fed every couple hours, I thought, well, that's a very heartwarming story. As a mom, I can connect with that. But as a dietitian, I was thinking, well, what the heck does this have to do with me working out and, my clients? But what happened is, if nothing else, when you see that graph and you see with your eyes how long UCAN can last. It might be 2 or 3 hours. It just depends on you personally and how metabolically efficient you are. But above all, it is absolutely how it's been life-changing for so many people. So really, really, I mean, the stories that I hear, the stories that Varn hears also every day is absolutely it's inspirational to us. We love to hear your stories of how UCAN has changed your lives.
So with that, Karen, let's answer a few questions. And again, if anyone wants to come on and share their story with us, please do let us know in the chat. We'd love to bring you on. Karen, I know you had a couple questions emailed into you. Do you want to get us rolling and start out with one of the questions that you have?
Yeah, basically, a lot of people have been asking about dosing. So people will write to me and they'll say, I'm on a 3-hour ride. Should I take 3 scoops all at once? Should I, try maybe during my ride or during my run? Should I be having it during? I'm running out of energy at this time and that time. Should that be happening? So let's talk about dosing for a minute, because this is back to, UCAN and Sports Nutrition 101. Really important to know first and foremost, it's the first thing I'm telling, which I love your questions, is just to let you know everybody's body is different. And you'll definitely want to play around with some things. You want to play around with dosing, timing. If there was a magic number that I could tell you, definitely do this and it's going to solve, but there isn't, just because everybody's body is different. And I mentioned metabolic efficiency. It just means that, if you happen to be highly trained, you can, in your body, might break down at a different rate than it's breaking down and releasing energy and lasting for someone else. So that's why it's so important to play with it. Now, some people have told me that if they're on, for example, an ultra endurance event, or they happen to be out there, let's say in an Ironman, and they're out there multiple hours, what I would recommend is not just to play with the dosing, but also play with our different products. So I have lots of people who have kind of iron stomachs. I'm not one of those people. I can't eat a steak and a gallon of ice cream and go run, and some people do. So if you happen to have a stomach that can tolerate it, but again, you can try it in your training run and see, try one of our UCAN products that have the protein added, because it'll feel like it sticks with you a little bit longer, especially if you happen to be doing something like triathlon where you're on a bike as well, and can also handle something like one of our bars that has the SUPERSTARCH in it, 15 grams of SUPERSTARCH, or even our powders have the protein in them. Just sometimes it makes it feel like it's a little bit more substantial, shall we say, and so body is absolutely different. You can play with trying 2 or 3 scoops before a 5-hour event and see how long it's lasting you. Make a mental note of these things in your mind. Or you can try it, 2 scoops before and then dose some throughout. Varn, I've told you several times before too, I take a scoop of UCAN before a 40-mile bike ride, and then I actually put a scoop of UCAN in my Camelback and I sip on it. It's not a conventional way to use it, but I finish that portions, shall we say, of UCAN at the front end of my ride. So it's not something that I'm waiting till the end to drink it all, because as we know, it takes about 30 minutes to leave your stomach and start to be absorbed in your small intestine and break down and deliver energy to your body. So I'll have it on the front end, but it is something to think about. Some different ways to play with our products, and depending on how long your event is and your training.
So to piggyback off that point, we had one question that gentleman asked. Before my recent half marathon in Chicago, I had a UCAN packet with water when I woke up about 2 hours before the race, and then ate a UCAN bar, or excuse me, let me just make sure. Then ate a bar 15 to 30 minutes before the race, felt great and had no problem. So my question is, what's the difference between the UCAN bar and the UCAN powder? So this is piggybacking a little off what you said, Karen, but the UCAN bars that you guys see on the screen, again, that are described a little bit here, are much more steady energy bars rather than protein bars, in the traditional sense. So they have some protein in them, but these are not high protein, muscle building, meal replacement type of bars. These are really bars that have the SUPERSTARCH in them that are meant to regulate your blood sugar and give you that extended energy. So like Karen was just talking a little bit about, the bars and the packets and the powders, you can really view them in some regard as interchangeable. See what format works better for you, see what settles better in your stomach. And the point that she just made, I'll make the same point in regards to this question. If you're a little bit hungry before you exercise, or you're going to be out there for a long time, it might be good to have one of the UCAN products with protein in it, like the UCAN snack bar. If you're simply just looking for that extended energy, you had a meal a couple hours before, then certainly one of the other UCAN products, like the UCAN drink mix, would be ideal for before a run. But you can really mix and match and play around with it however you see fit. There's not a huge difference from a performance standpoint. Now, the drinks are a more concentrated dose. A full packet of UCAN has about 25 to 30 grams of the starch, which is the key ingredient, the key energy source, while the bars have about 13 to 15 grams of the starch. But because the bars have some protein, some fat in them, people have said the energy they feel from a serving of each is fairly comparable. So give it a try and see which one works best for you. Karen, we have another question that I wanted to pose with you. A lot of questions actually surrounding intensity of exercise and UCAN. So, a lot of questions. Here's just one in general. I took UCAN exclusively for my marathon training and in 3 to 5 ounce flasks for the marathon last year. Got me through the end. I took it about every half hour after I started the marathon. Now, I've heard lots of people say that the research shows that burning fat and being fat adapted is not an actual way to improve your run time, that you need carbs to go fast. So, what's interesting about that question, and we hear some variation of this a lot, is first of all, we talk about UCAN allowing you to burn fat because it's coming in at a controlled rate and it's not spiking your insulin. It's not dumping a lot of sugar or carbohydrate into your body very quickly. So because of that, your body is better able to metabolize and utilize fat. It's not being forced to react to this influx of sugar. But we want to make sure we clear up any confusion. UCAN is still a carbohydrate. So, when in this question, when you say that you need carbs to go fast, if you're ingesting UCAN, you're still ingesting carbohydrates. So you're simply ingesting a carbohydrate that's working differently than a sugar. So with that being said, Karen, what would be your general response to those people wondering, do you need sugar to go fast? Can you get faster with something like UCAN, which is a more steady carbohydrate source, or if you're going fast, you have to use sugar?
Yeah, it's UCAN, what it does, since it is a carbohydrate, like you mentioned, Varn, it's just a really large molecule just because of the nature of how it's produced, cooked hydrothermically for over 40 hours. It makes just a super large molecule. I could bore you with all the science, but basically what it does is sit in your small intestine and slowly break off over time, so much so that you're not spiking your blood sugar. You're not getting this huge influx of carbohydrates and sugar, which raises your blood sugar. P.S. When you raise your blood sugar, your insulin has to be released by your pancreas in order to cover that so that your blood sugar doesn't stay high. It's just the nature of how normally bodies will work, unless, like I mentioned, you might have some sort of blood sugar issue or diabetes or something like that. But it keeps it steady, and your insulin levels will keep that blood sugar down. That's its job. However, when insulin spikes as well, you're not in a fat burning mode anymore. So I want you to think of UCAN. I mean, obviously, it is a carbohydrate, but because it doesn't spike your blood sugar, now you are a hybrid car. So you are using the UCAN absolutely to fuel your muscle and to fuel your brain, to keep you alert and that steady energy state and that calm feeling that Varn mentioned. But you're also using body fat stores. And most of us out there have unlimited body fat stores when we're talking about exercise and a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour activity or more, depending on what kind of things that you're out there doing. And in this case, that steady state is something that's fueling you because it's mixed with the energy from your other body fat stores as well. So my biggest thing, and this piggybacks onto that too as well, is one of the biggest mistakes that I see runners making is they're not using UCAN on a daily basis. They save it and they say, well, I'm just going to use it on my long run on Saturday morning, or I'm going to use it when I'm out there more than 10 miles or whatever. But what you're trying to do is to train your body to be using those body fat stores and using UCAN even for your shorter runs, your mile runs, or what you might consider a rest day and you're going to go light. It's hugely important because of that nature of that hybrid system. Now, as far as needing more sugar in order to go faster, we just don't see that. I mean, there's people who do sprints and very quick sudden bursts of energy, whether it's powerlifting or other activities. We have top taekwondo athletes in the US that use it. I mean, these are really explosive sports, and you can absolutely recruit the energy that you need while using UCAN for those activities. So don't be afraid to think that you have to either add something or use a high sugar something or other in place of this, because you really don't. And then that's the exciting thing, is it takes you out of prison, what people say. I used to be in the sugar prison, and I used to have to need it every 15 minutes during my run, or gels or goose, and now you don't have to do that anymore, and that's the beauty of it.
And Karen, I'm so happy you said what you did about training, because like anything, your body works differently based on how you train it. So I think we see this a lot with endurance athletes, but there's sort of this notion that suddenly when the intensity's at a certain level, like you're not burning fat at all, period, and you can't burn fat. And the truth is, your body's always burning a mix of fuels. You're always burning some mix of fat and carbohydrate. And you can train your body to become more efficient at burning fat and to burn more fat at higher intensity. So one of the ideas with UCAN and using it throughout training is that if you're always working out with your body in this steady blood sugar, steady energy state, then throughout your training, you're allowing your body to become more efficient at burning fat. Your body isn't just relying on these constant feedings of sugar. And as you do that throughout your training, you're going to improve that point and improve your ability to burn fat at various intensities and for a longer period of time. So kind of part of this whole blood sugar control and carbohydrate control approach, and if you even extend it to call it this metabolic efficiency approach with endurance athletes, where you're becoming better at burning fat, is that you're simply not depleting your carbohydrate stores like the high carb runner might. So it stands to reason, when you need to do that sprint towards the end of an effort, or when you need to climb that hill on your bike, if your body is more in that controlled carbohydrate state and you're not depleting your stores, then you still have stored carbohydrate to push you through. And this is something, that we've seen in the lab with dietitians like Bob Seebahar, who've done metabolic testing and metabolic efficiency tests on themselves and on various athletes who have utilized UCAN. There was a gentleman, Lance Leo, out at Lifetime Fitness in Minnesota a couple of years. He did a treadmill test where he ingested UCAN in one exercise and then ingested the Hammer Heat product, which has maltodextrin in it, and showed that when he was running at 10.0 miles on the treadmill and he had UCAN in his system, he was burning a much higher percentage of fat than he did when he had Hammer in his system with maltodextrin. So basically, yeah, to answer, I mean, there's a long answer, but to answer that question, you can absolutely utilize UCAN even at higher intensities, especially when we're talking about, the high intensities in a marathon race or a triathlon race. It can absolutely meet your needs. But like Karen said, if you're training with sugar and then on race day, you suddenly say, let me switch up to UCAN, or you haven't really implemented UCAN and played around with it in your training to understand the timing of it, then, like anything, it may not work as well as it could. So yeah, Karen, anything else to add on that specific topic, or should we move on?
No, I think that's great.
Awesome. So a couple folks had questions around that topic, both on the triathlon side and on the running side. So hopefully on the topic of intensity and utilizing UCAN, we answer that question. Now, let's talk about mixing UCAN. We had several questions about what can you mix UCAN with during an endurance event. So some people are asking, can you mix UCAN with other carbs during an endurance event? What other real food nutrition would you pair with UCAN for an endurance event or during a long event? What would you say, Karen? There's two parts to that question. So maybe first, just in terms of pairing other carbohydrates with UCAN, what would you say overall? And if people are going to do that, what do you suggest? And then the second question was, what types of real foods, if you're doing a really long event, would you want to consider pairing with UCAN?
Yeah, so great questions, and they're very important questions, because this is times when, we have really religious users of UCAN, and then we find out, oh my gosh, you've been mixing this with something that's high sugar, and kind of defeating the purpose of what we're trying to do here, because we want you to be an efficient fat burner, specifically for the fact that it allows you to go longer periods of time without being without needing to have that high sugar, like I mentioned, every 15, 20 minutes or so, even if it's just a hydration product like a Gatorade, Powerade, whatever, gels, goos, etc., that you might be taking. You don't want to have to be a slave to doing that. You want to be free to take your UCAN and have it last a little bit longer, when you are mixing it, what happens is then you're out of fat burning mode. So that's the most important thing to remember. And it doesn't matter if it happens to be, oh, I'm doing a smoothie in the morning and I start with 2 cups of fruit and then add UCAN. That's defeating the purpose as well, because we really, and if you're interested in this, you'll want to write this down, because you're going to be looking at labels. And I really encourage people to look at labels, because you want to know what's in things. If not, you can also look up the carbohydrate content of things online. Just put in a quick search for strawberries or whatever you're wanting to add to your shakes or smoothies. This is part one of that answer, by the way. And that would be, you're looking for something that has less than 10 grams of carbohydrate in it. So if it happens to be, like I mentioned, strawberries, so it could be bananas, fruits, and you want to add it to your UCAN, you need to look for something that's less than 10 grams. So we have a UCAN recipe book that's fantastic. I don't know how many recipes in there. It's got to be like 50. It's so many recipes, fantastic. But if you look through it, and we can post a link for that as well, when you look through it, what you'll find is when we do add fruit to our UCAN shakes and smoothies, it's a very small amount, because like I've mentioned before to people, and it's like a broken record, UCAN is your carbohydrate. So just remember that. If UCAN is your, and thanks Farn, you posted the link so that everybody can click on that and take a look at these amazing recipes. By the way, we love to receive your recipes too. So if you have a favorite UCAN recipe, Varn, I think that might be a good contest for us to have sometime soon again. Is if you have a favorite recipe, for sure. Yeah, for sure, send it to us, because we'll definitely, we love to share that. Our, recipes aren't the gospel. They're great recipes, but I'm sure there's some out there that you guys use and ways that you use UCAN that we'd love to hear about. But less than 10 grams of sugar. The other thing is, if you're mixing it with other food, I've had people who, they might be having a, omelet in the morning, and they want to have their eggs and put some cheese on it, and you've cooked it up with some coconut oil or MCT oil, and they're really kind of trying to stay in the zone with their protein, and instead of having a big fruit bomb in the morning and having a ton of fruit, or simple carbohydrates, or eating breakfast breads and muffins and bagels and cookies and whatever they might be eating in the morning, they might be more apt to mix a scoop of UCAN in some water, and that is your carbohydrate source if you're really, really in the zone. And by the way, and that's the second part of that question, and by the way, it bridges to, this is a perfect way for people, and there have been dozens who've come to see me over the years, and they have the same complaint. I'm a marathoner, or I'm a triathlete, and Karen, I'm 30 pounds overweight, and I need to lose this weight. So UCAN as a shake or a nutritional replacement for one meal a day, and then or snack, and then as you're training 30 minutes before you're using UCAN. That is a good solid 6 hours, if you think about it, from what we were showing you with the line graph and the sugar and all of that. That's a good solid 6 hours of you being in fat burning mode, because you're not spiking your insulin and you're no longer on that roller coaster. So it segues into something that people have asked me about a lot too, Varn, this week, is the other applications for UCAN. It's not just I'm using this for running or whatever, but I'm trying to manage my weight. So that's an example too of how you might use it. And then there's of course the bars. So if you don't want to mix a smoothie or shake or whatever, and you just want to reach for a real quick bar in the afternoon when it's your most difficult low energy time of the day, which is 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon for most people, or mid-morning if you have a super long time and hey, I'm in meetings till 1 and I'm going to get a late lunch, have these bars available. You can keep them in your desk drawer, you can grab one, and right there, 2 solid hours of energy or more, and you've made a healthy choice, keeps your insulin down, your blood sugar lower, and you're still in fat burning mode.
Awesome, Karen. And just to piggyback one more thing off you said, if we're talking about real food, to mix with UCAN, for example, during an event, it's really the same thought process as what Karen was outlining in terms of having the UCAN alongside of like an omelet, for example. So when you're eating during a long event, you know, generally speaking, like if you're also consuming UCAN, UCAN is providing you your carbohydrates and your energy. So things that you could eat in conjunction with UCAN, say for a long bike ride or an Ironman triathlon or an ultra marathon, are really sources of protein and fat in terms of things that would complement UCAN. So we've had people do everything from, you know, the squeezable nut butter packets, and then they still dose with their UCAN. The UCAN bars have a little bit of protein and fat, and they're low in sugar. We've had people snack on nuts. You certainly have to be careful. You know, you don't want to overdo it with the protein and fat, especially all at once during exercise. You want to play around with it certainly in your training and see what works for you. But the general thought process around eating in conjunction with UCAN should be that what you're eating aids satiety, and then your UCAN is for your energy. So yeah, so that kind of, we'll put a bow on that. Now, we had one question out from Brian, who was just wondering, just from a product standpoint, are our products vegan and vegetarian friendly? So Brian, just to give you and anyone else who's interested in that on the quick rundown, all of the UCAN drink mixes are vegan and vegetarian friendly. So they have the SUPERSTARCH, some flavor, some electrolytes, but no dairy, no protein in them. Then the UCAN with protein, these products are currently not vegetarian friendly. So these ones come in two flavors, the chocolate and the vanilla. They both include the SUPERSTARCH plus whey protein. So these ones, not vegetarian friendly. We are looking, I would say, definitely by next year to come out with a vegan SUPERSTARCH plus protein flavor. So stay tuned for that. For the moment, though, if you do want to pair UCAN with a protein source, you know, you would just get your own vegan protein and add it to one of our powdered UCAN flavors. And then finally, the UCAN snack bars. We do have two flavors. The coffee and the peach right now that are vegan friendly, and they have the SUPERSTARCH and a pea and a brown rice protein blend. There's 3 other flavors that have whey protein in them, but we do have 2 flavors of the bars that are vegan friendly. So hope that helps, Brian. Karen, I had another question from Dana. Just wanted to know about being pre-diabetic and how to think about UCAN. So love to have you just chat a little bit about that. You know, for people with diabetes, people who are pre-diabetic, why is UCAN a different type of carbohydrate and something that might be beneficial for them, you know, as opposed to other carbohydrate sources?
Yeah, Varn, I just want to clarify something on that last bit. If you could go back to the last slide with the powders and so you can with protein. So the protein that we have is a whey protein. It's obviously from the byproduct of dairy processing. So if you happen to be a vegetarian that does dairy, these are suitable for you. And I just say that because I deal with so many vegetarians that are a little bit different than vegans. So any of our SUPERSTARCH products for vegans would be okay. Vegans wouldn't want to use this whey protein, but vegetarians could. So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody listening. Because I know a lot of people still do dairy and whey, and in that case, this would be a product suitable for vegetarians, this particular one, but not vegans because they're not doing dairy. It's funny that you mentioned the blood sugar issues, because that was one of the things that I put on my list that lots of people were asking me about too this week. So I really wanted to talk about that, because people that actually are starting to notice that they're having blood sugar issues, or they either already do and they might have been diagnosed as pre-diabetic or diabetic and they're just starting off on that journey. This is truly important, because usually when people are diagnosed as pre-diabetic, it's because there's something else larger going on, and it's usually something called metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is just kind of an umbrella term for what's going on. It could be clinically that we're dealing with an amount of weight loss that needs to take place in order to help to control blood sugars a little bit better. It might just be that blood sugars are high, could be a number of different factors, but typically what we're running into is that it's you know, a doctor might tell you, and they usually tell you together at the same time. You have your blood tested, and they say, oh, your blood sugar's running a little bit high. You know, it's over 100 milligrams per deciliter. It's 110, and you are now what we would consider pre-diabetic. And by the way, my friend, you need to lose 15 to 20 pounds and come to see me in 3 months. This is what doctors are telling their patients. And a lot of times people are left with wondering, well, what do I do about that exactly? So you can do a ton of different, you know, diets that are online. Maybe, you know, you've tried certain things, and this is where the frustration comes in, because people really are trying to make those changes, but also looking to be healthy, but not also crash out or be low on energy the whole time that they're trying to accomplish this weight loss. This is where UCAN can be hugely helpful, and where I've used it with clients in the past as well, because what you're talking about now with metabolic syndrome and or pre-diabetes is a lot of what I see, again, from my personal and professional experience, is a lot of sugar cravings. A lot of times people are on that roller coaster where you might be reading things that says, well, you need to eat every 3 hours, and you're eating what you think is healthy, but it's spiking your blood sugar, and it contains a certain amount of carbohydrates that's taking you from one sugar high to the next sugar high, to the next sugar high, to every time you're feeding yourself, then you're keeping your blood sugar high. It's hard to lose weight. And P.S., at the end of the day, you're going to still end up with higher blood sugar or a higher hemoglobin A1C, which is that average of blood sugars over 3 months' time. And you think, well, I was trying to be healthy. I was picking healthy things. I even ate fruit and whole grains and whatever, but they're still going to have a certain amount of carbohydrates that keeps you on that roller coaster. And you can help to get things under control by inserting UCAN, like I had mentioned a moment ago, twice a day. And in that twice a day, what you're going to notice is not just what I mentioned with the fat burn for those solid 6 hours that you're dosing with 2, you know, UCAN products at different times of the day. Maybe you do a shake in the morning for breakfast. That's 3 hours of steady energy right there. You're a bar or something, a UCAN bar, that'll help, again, to give you that fat burning energy, but it's stable, steady blood sugars. And that's hugely important when you're pre-diabetic, because to me, what that says is you need to get off that sugar roller coaster of those peaks every few hours of eating and spiking your blood sugar. And this is where UCAN can help a lot with that, because now you're controlling your blood sugars, keeping them nice and steady and low, and keeping your insulin levels low as well. Someone asked me as well, I want to mention this too, about sleeping and their blood sugar, because they're getting a dip, a low blood sugar at night, and they're waking up with something called the dawn phenomenon, which is higher blood sugar. And it's super frustrating, because a lot of times people will think, well, should I eat an evening snack? What should I do to avoid this dawn phenomenon? Again, it's still that roller coaster of your blood sugar kind of all over the place. So anecdotally, because we know the science of it and what you can do, you could try a scoop of UCAN at night if you happen to be in that boat, or if you happen to be a person with normal, quote unquote, normal blood sugars, and you just happen to be waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I know you guys are out there, because there's a good number of you on this call that are typically waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not a psychic. I just know your blood sugar is dipping, and you're on that sleep cycle where it's, you know, you're waking up at night. So try a scoop of UCAN. It's 90 calories. Try a scoop of UCAN at night. See if that doesn't help control your blood sugar at night as well, even for those of us that don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes.
And Karen, just in terms of the general application, you kind of talked through some of this as with what you were just saying, but really, again, just to stress that for people that are thinking about weight management, you know, and to eliminate stress-based eating, so much of that can be alleviated just through managing blood sugar. And you know, for a lot of people, just kind of day to day that are like, oh, I want to drop a few pounds, or I need to watch my weight, you know, they really might be kind of fearful of consuming something, or I should say adding additional carbohydrate to their diet, you know, or kind of like viewing something that's a carb source like UCAN as being conducive to that goal. And I just really wanted to highlight this slide because it just, again, kind of frames the way you want to think about UCAN, even though it is a carbohydrate source, because of everything that Karen was just talking about in terms of the blood sugar management that the SUPERSTARCH provides, and how it can be beneficial, you know, in different contexts, even as a healthier carbohydrate source for pre-diabetic individuals. Really just to think about the energy that 20 grams from UCAN would give you versus, you know, 20 grams from a piece of bread, from a cup of rice, from a cup of oats. It's a very, very different type of carbohydrate because of the way it slowly releases into your body. Could you just maybe speak to that aspect of it, Karen, just in terms of how people kind of, I don't know if retrain their minds the right way, but just how they can think about UCAN differently, just in the context of adding carbohydrate to their diet when they might be trying to manage their weight?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. You know, when you're looking at these things on the right, your half a cup, I'm gonna think that that's brown rice, and then some whole wheat bread, and then some oatmeal. These are things, I'm not saying don't have them if they're in your diet, but I think we can all agree that we, especially as Americans, kind of overindulge on these things. And sometimes, you know, we took the health halo, is what we call, when something is a food that we see as healthy, but then you kind of go overboard and you say, well, it's healthy, so I can eat a lot of whole wheat pasta, or I can eat a lot of oatmeal because it's quote unquote healthy for me. And that's where we really run into a lot of problems. So remember when I told you that I wanted you to read some food labels? I want to throw in an extra little added tip for you. When you're looking at carbohydrates, you're obviously, these things that we've got on the screen is about 20 grams of carbs. What I want you to also notice on your food label is, for traditional foods, again, we're not talking about UCAN here. I'm going to talk about and compare this in a second, but it's important for you to understand when you're eating the rest of your day and not having the UCAN, that you're still making healthy choices that'll help stabilize your blood sugar. And the way to do that with the other traditional sources is, number one, don't go crazy. We're talking about 1 to 2 servings of carbohydrates every meal. So that's about 15 grams of carbohydrates to 30 grams of carbohydrates, depending on whether you're male, female, what size you are. So this is where it helps to see a registered dietitian if you're really wanting to dial in and zone in on how much that you should be having of each of your macros. But when you do, look at the nutrition facts label, and also make sure where it says dietary fiber, you're going to be looking for, don't worry about the grams. It's kind of tedious to be counting all the grams all day, but try and keep things around in your pantry that have 10% or more of dietary fiber. And the reason that we say that is it does help. Again, if you're having 3 or 4 servings, it's not going to help that much because you're spiking your blood sugar too much. But if you keep the carbohydrates lower, and you have 10% or more on the dietary fiber of those carbohydrates, it does help to smooth out that blood sugar curve, so you're not spiking your blood sugar as much. And then you're going to pair it with the protein. We are all about healthy eating the rest of the day at UCAN as well. We know that most people aren't going to live by only UCAN as their sole carbohydrate source, but if you can get it in 1 to 2 times per day, it does help as a meal or snack, because it will keep your blood sugar low. It'll spike your blood sugar less and your insulin less than even protein sources. So let's talk about the difference between these two. The science behind them, or the really geeky science, is again how I mentioned that UCAN molecule, that what we call a superstarch, we call it that for a reason, because it's huge. The molecule is huge compared to a regular traditional carbohydrate source, which breaks down into the simplest of carbohydrates, glucose, much quicker. And that's why we say you get that spike, because even though it has some fiber in it, like I mentioned, a lot of times people are just eating way too much of these carbohydrate sources, even the healthy, what we consider healthy ones, and it is raising their blood sugar way too much. That won't happen with UCAN. You can have 5 or 6 scoops of UCAN. Most people don't do that, but it would just last you longer. It wouldn't spike your blood sugar higher, where if you ate, 4 cups of rice, it would be much different than half a cup of rice pictured here. Your blood sugar would spike. So it's a very different way of looking looking at carbohydrates. It is quite honestly a new source of carbohydrate in the world.
Awesome, Karen. That's a good clarification. Appreciate that. So we just got a couple minutes left. So we gave, wanted to definitely make sure we talked a little bit on just the health and the everyday application of UCAN. In closing, I just know we had some specific questions in terms of marathon and triathlon fueling protocols with UCAN. So just want to spend a couple minutes to talk through that. And Wesley, I know as part of that, you had a question as well, which I will certainly get to as part of this section. So generally speaking, for any type of endurance event or endurance training, whether you're on the bike, swimming, running, the best time to utilize UCAN, number one, is as a pre-exercise fuel source. So Karen spoke about it in the past, already about whether, you want to use a UCAN snack bar or the UCAN powder. It's kind of up to you. And for a lot of folks, if they're coming off an overnight fast and they're working out first thing in the morning and you're going really long, in some cases that might be a better time to utilize UCAN with protein because you haven't eaten in a while. If you're exercising in the evening, same deal. You haven't eaten in several hours. But again, that's up to you whether or not you want to do the UCAN with protein or eat a little bit of food and have UCAN. But you want to think of UCAN as your energy source. So even with the UCAN drink, when you're consuming it before a workout, remember, it's liquid food. It's not a sports drink that you sip on slowly. It's liquid food that you're consuming 30 minutes before a workout. A few of you asked, why 30 minutes? So because the SUPERSTARCH is a slower to break down energy source, it requires about 20 or 30 minutes before it kicks in and enters your system. So that's why we recommend prior to exercise, take it about 30 minutes before. Now, the cool thing about UCAN, Karen just got through describing how it's a very complex and large molecule. Because of this fact, it means that the amount of water you mix it with doesn't impact the way it digests. So UCAN is not like a sugar-based, for you endurance athletes, it's not a sugar-based gel or a sugar fuel source that you need to chase with X amount of fluid to aid digestion. You can mix UCAN as thick or as thin as you'd like. It certainly impacts the taste and the consistency, but it doesn't impact the way the product works. And had a few people mention that they're having good success with UCAN, still trying to figure out from a stomach standpoint the best way to consume it, the timing of it. Wesley, I know that was one thing you had mentioned. For a lot of folks, sometimes it simply may be that they're mixing UCAN with too much fluid. You're taking in 16 ounces or 20 ounces of fluid right before you exercise, because you might think it's necessary, but it's simply not necessary to have that much fluid along with UCAN. And for some athletes, that'll cause that sloshy bellying or some heaviness in the stomach. So that could be one way if you are using UCAN and feeling good energy, but you're feeling a little bit of GI rumbling from it. Some of it could be that you're just consuming it with too much fluid. Now, I spoke a little bit about using UCAN before exercise. In terms of using UCAN during exercise, this exact same product that you see on the screen can also be used during exercising. And depending on the amount you want to take in at once, we have athletes using a scoop of UCAN or half a packet every 45 minutes to an hour. Some athletes like to take in more at once and they take the full packet and they'll have it every 90 minutes. Somebody like Karen, I know, she mentioned, she spoke about her cycling. She'd used UCAN before and then start to sip on a second serving at some point during her ride. So there's many ways you can play around with this and practice it. One of the tactics we recommend when people are first using UCAN is to really dose with it at sort of set intervals. So you may start with a packet before, and then every 75 to 90 minutes, you're taking in an additional packet of UCAN. Now, for a lot of you, especially in the triathlon world, it might take a minute for you to wrap your mind around this because you're coming from this school of thought where they're suggesting 300 calories per hour, 400 calories per hour, or 250 calories per hour. And here we are with UCAN telling you, actually, you only need to take in about, a packet every 75 to 90 minutes or 60 to 90 minutes, which is really about 120, 130 calories. I would really suggest that you start with our recommendations and then adjust it from there, because as we've talked about at length, this is a very different type of fuel source. It's slow releasing, so it's not going to cause that up and down in your blood sugar where you feel like you need to compensate for that by over fueling. And B, it's stimulating a better usage of body fat for fuel. So again, you don't need to take in as much from the outside because you're getting more from the inside. So start with our recommendations, and then certainly feel free to adjust it up or down from there. You could take in more, you can, a packet every hour if that works for you. If you like Karen's method, if you feel like it's a little starchy, I don't know if I can kind of take it all in every 5 or 10 minutes, take it all in over a 5 or 10 minute period and then kind of set it and forget it for an hour, then certainly, you could take kind of a gulp of it every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes and see if that works for you. But a lot of the reasons endurance athletes like UCAN is I half jokingly say this about myself. I'm not smart enough to exercise and eat at the same time. So, if I could do something, and for a lot of endurance athletes, if we could do something that you can do your fueling up front and then you can do your fueling less frequently and kind of take in it all at once and then not have to worry about it for an extended period of time, that's a really nice feeling. The same deal that I'm talking about with the UCAN powders during your workout also could apply for the UCAN snack bar. So a lot of people, especially I know cyclists, I've even had marathon runners tell me this, that they'll start with the drink, have that before, and then just because of the convenience of carrying it, they'll switch to the UCAN snack bar during their workout. So this, again, just like we talked about with the powder, play around and see what works for you. I've spoken to some folks that have the powder or the bar before, 75 to 90 minutes into their workout, they're eating a whole bar, over the span of a few minutes or a mile, and then they're good for another extended window. For other people, one of our ambassadors, Carrie, I remember I spoke to her after the Chicago Marathon. She's fast. She ran like a 2:40 Chicago Marathon. She had a packet of UCAN before, starting at about an hour 20 into her marathon. She had the coffee bar that you see on the screen cut up into 5 small pieces, and she was just taking a bite of it every 15 to 20 minutes. So she was kind of using that bar in small intervals over the course of her marathon. So one of the big benefits, I would say, just for the endurance athlete, it's twofold with UCAN. A, over the long haul, you're going to find that once you get the UCAN fueling right, you're not going to consume nearly as many calories over the long duration of your event, but your energy is not going to suffer. So, for most people, I'd say we take that trade-off, right? Nobody wants to stuff their face with sugary fuels. You just kind of do it because you think it might be a necessary evil. But with UCAN, we really find that as people train with it and get used to it, they are able to go longer without having to take in as much. And the second thing I would say from an endurance athlete standpoint, when I talk to our retail stores and ask them, why are you recommending UCAN to people? What are they looking for when you turn them on to UCAN? They say that for so many people, it's simply just a stomach issue. So they either don't know what to eat before a workout, can't eat before a workout, or struggle with the mid-exercise fueling. And because of everything Karen just described, from the molecular structure of the superstarch and how easy UCAN is on the stomach, it's really an energy source that digests much easier during exercise. So you're going to want to play around with the timing. It's a different fuel source. You're not going to take as much of it or take it as frequently as your other fuel sources. You might be a little scared at first, totally understand that. Might take you a little bit of time to trust it. That's why train with it. It's so important to train with it. And just the experience of so many athletes has shown that it'll really make things a lot easier over the long haul. Karen, that was a long monologue on my end. What do you have to add to that? Anything I missed out or anything you wanted to piggyback?
No, that was really great. I think it really does boil down to that individuality. I mean, there's people that say they do this or that before a long run or any run. I mean, even if it's a shorter run, you're thinking, gosh, you do that? So everyone's body is different. I know that we're about to wrap up. I wanna put out a call to action to those of you that are listening, because I know you had the poll up, and your poll was saying that about 72% of the listeners, participants on this talk show were into endurance training or using UCAN for that endurance component. But if you've been listening to this webinar and listening to Varn and I talk about this, now hopefully you're starting to open up your mind to other applications of UCAN, and it's not just for endurance activities. And I know that you sitting out there, I know that you know somebody that can benefit from UCAN that never runs ever. And this is where my call to action comes, because I've been with the company with UCAN since the beginning of this year, but I've been recommending it in my private practice for 6 years to just about everybody because it's so life changing. So if you're sitting out there and you have someone who either needs to manage their weight, or maybe they do have prediabetes or diabetes, or maybe they're working out but they're not running, they're weightlifting, or they're going to group fitness classes, or maybe you just know a mom who's super busy, sometimes too busy to eat herself, or picks things, and she's told you before, oh hey, sometimes I grab stuff that's not really healthy for me because I'm in a hurry and I'm eating the goldfish that I'm giving the kids, and they're on that roller coaster, and looking from the outside that they're on that roller coaster for any of the reasons that I mentioned. Would you please do that person a favor and do us a favor and help spreading the word about UCAN, because that's what it all boils down to. From Jonah, whose life was absolutely changed as a baby when his father co-founded the company, to all of the people whose lives have been changed. And out there that it's not just endurance athletes whose lives have been changed, it's across the board. So pick someone, if it's an older adult who maybe your mother, grandmother, who isn't eating very much but could use some steady energy. I mean, these are just across the board really great applications for UCAN that I think a lot of people aren't thinking so much about, and there's so many people out there that can benefit from just steady energy throughout their day.
Well, fantastic, Karen. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us today, and a lot of great questions. Really happy that we could make this session very question-driven and hopefully answer what you guys wanted to. For those of you that didn't have your questions answered, don't you worry at all. Karen and I will be responding to those of you that have emailed us and whose questions we couldn't address by email. And everybody here will get a full recording of this webinar plus a special offer just here in a little bit. So if there's anything you want to listen back to, stay tuned. I also want to add that our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram pages, that our online social media community, it's really a phenomenal place. Just we repost customer stories all the time. Really a good place to get feedback about UCAN, hear about what others in the community are doing, ask your questions. So definitely check us out on social media. And Michael asked if these slides are going to be available. I will include the slides in the follow-up as well. So you'll get a full recording of this session along with the slide deck that you can download and reference at your own convenience. So with all that, I just want to thank everybody for coming on. We've been at this now, kind of this whole talk show and online webinar type of deal for about 3 years, I would say now, and I'm just continuously amazed by how engaged you guys are as a community and all the great questions that you always have for us each week. So I want to thank everybody. We couldn't do it without you, and Karen couldn't do it without you either. Thanks for bringing your knowledge and insight to this webinar. Really appreciate having you on.
Oh, I always have a great time. I always love when I open my inbox. I never know what I'm going to find. You guys have the best questions, and we hope that you'll join us in the future too. And like Varn said, if you have any other questions too, just feel free to email. That's what we're here for, to help you guys out.
Awesome. Well, for Karen Hosenfeld, I'm Varn Shriram. We will be doing this pretty frequently over the next several months. So hope you can check us next time. Hope you guys will chat with us next time as well, and keep those questions coming. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. Take care.